guys. Thank you, everyone who is joining here on this Teams Bible study group that we're going to have every Sunday at 7 p.m. This is really our first session here. And what I was thinking that we should do is kind of like an introductory. We are going to go through the Bible in terms of why should we trust it? I mean, if we're going to do a Bible study on the different books of the Bible, we first have to look at the Bible as a whole. I mean, why are we even studying the Bible? That's very important because I know that there's a lot of skeptics out there that will tell you that the Bible is just some fairy tale, that these stories never really existed. These people are just make-believe. There's no historical evidence. There's no architectural evidence for any of the things that happen in the Bible. And you're going to come across people like that, especially in a lot of the liberal colleges out there, professors that will say, you know what, the Bible is just a fairy tale and we can't really trust it. So as Christians, it is my belief that we should be able to provide good evidence for why we trust the Bible. We should be able to come up with a few things and be able to defend the Bible. I mean, the Bible is God's word to us, to His creation. So we should be able to defend it. And that's going to be probably the focus of at least today and possibly next week, that we're going to go through the Bible in terms of why can we trust it. After that, we're going to be going through different aspects of, like, we're going to talk about sin one session. Maybe we'll talk about God the next session, the Trinity. And then once after that, we're going to start with the book of John. We're going to go verse by verse. And we're going to just go right through it in detail. So starting with the evidence for the Bible, this is not meant to be a very comprehensive kind of review of the evidences for the Bible, but it will be enough for you to be able to defend the Bible. Defending the Bible, there's actually a term for that. It's called apologetics. I'm sure you guys have heard it. So apologetics is a big thing that, you know, we defend our faith. We defend our Bible. So first question, and this is going to be a very interactive question. Why is it important to know with absolute certainty that we can trust the Bible? And I'm going to open it to you guys. Why do you think? Why is it important? And I think I briefly talked about that too. So anyone can say anything. Don't be shy. Just and please unmute yourself if you're trying to say something. Anybody?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So, okay, it's very important because, I mean, it's the foundation of our faith. So that's why we need to be able to defend it. So some of the questions that we'll talk about in this session was the Bible changed over time? I mean, if this is the Word of God, has the Bible changed over time? Is it going to change next year? Were the stories invented? Are the manuscripts reliable? Now, one thing that you guys need to know is that we don't have the original Bible. We don't have an original Bible document. We don't have the Bible. I think what we do have, though, are manuscripts, which are faithful copies of the original. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So now you have skeptics, and as I kind of alluded to that earlier, especially from academic circles, you know, professors, History Channel, a lot of these places will say, well, you know, the Bible has been changed so many times. How can it be reliable? If it's changing, it can't be reliable. Another argument is, it was written long after the events of the crucifixion or whatever the event is. It was written long after that. So, how do we know that these events that happened? How do we know that they were preserved? Um, the stories are myths or legends, like Jack and the Beanstalk. These are like Veggie Tales. These are just legends, you know. And I've heard this actually, this fourth point, that religious leaders altered it for power. That's probably one of the main reasons, one of the main skeptics that I've heard from is they say that, you know, they use the Bible, they change it, and they just make it, they change it so that they have ultimately the power over the people. And obviously that is wrong. Um, Understanding whether the Bible is trustworthy is very important because the Bible, unlike any other document, unlike any other historic book, there's a lot of historic books. There's a lot of religious books out there, the Quran, the Book of Mormon, but the Bible actually is very, very different because it actually talks about morality. What happened? How did humanity get to this point? Why is there so much hate in the world? Why is there so much crime? What happened? Um, it has a very good historical background. You know, a lot of people will say, well, you know, this is all just made up. But to be honest with you, the Bible is a historical account. So a lot of people, and I'll get into that a little bit later, actually use it as a piece of history that you can actually rely on. And the Bible, lastly, makes claims about God. Now, I know that the Book of Mormon and the Quran, for example, in Islam, they'll talk about God. They make their own claim about God, but the Bible is very unique in its claims about God. Now, the overview of the evidence I will go through is number one, fulfilled prophecy. Um, that's kind of one of the biggest ones for me because I love Bible prophecy. Prophecy is, and I'll get to that a little bit later, is just a prediction, a prediction. So it has a lot of predictions. As a matter of fact, up to 30% of the Bible is predicting future events that have, a lot of them have come true, and many of which are yet to come to fruition. I'll talk about the historical accuracy of the claims of the Bible. Archaeology is huge in the Bible. I mean, if we're going to be talking about or confirming the reliability of the Bible, we need to know that there's actually artifacts out there that point to certain events of the Bible. And I'll get into that. Manuscripts. Again, the Bible, we don't have an original Bible, unfortunately, but we have copies that are very reliable. The Bible, long before we had telescopes and stuff like that, the Bible made scientific claims that many years after, hundreds of years later, maybe even 1,000 years later, actually were proven by more novel scientific discoveries, you know, and like the Hubble telescope. We didn't have the Hubble telescope, you know, back in during Jesus's time, but many of the claims that the Bible makes now we have confirmed with technology. Now, a lot of people, number six, will say, well, you know, all these historical sources are coming from Christians and people that have direct ties to the Bible. But what about secular sources? Do you guys know what I mean by secular? So secular means non-Christian, non-biblical sources, outside sources. That's what I mean. And it's very important that if we're going to uh, provide evidence for the Bible, that we don't just provide evidence from Christian sources, because that could be biased. But most importantly, from non-Christians, other sources from non-Christians that validate the claims of the Bible. And I will tell you that there are many. Number seven, honesty of the writers. And I'll get into that also, that the Bible was written by many authors, and it talks a lot about the claims of these authors, the shortcomings of these authors. If these authors wrote about themselves, which they did in the Bible, they didn't brag about themselves. They talked about their shortcomings, and we'll talk about that. A major thing is transformational impact. The Bible has had the biggest impact in the world on living moral life and the claims and hospitals and what they have done. A lot of Christians have done great things for our society. And then the testimony of Jesus himself. What does he say about the Word of God, about the Bible? So we'll get into that one by one. What is the Bible? In this session, if you can remember these three lines, it's very, very important. So the Bible is a collection of 66 books written over a period of 1,500 years in three different continents, in three different languages, by 40 different authors. So that's like kind of the most important thing to understand is that unlike other books like the Quran was only written by one person, Muhammad. Book of Mormon was written by one person, Joseph Smith. But the Bible is very, very different because there's, again, 40 different authors from three different continents, many of whom never actually even met each other. Yet their accounts are very, very identical, if not similar. The Bible was written by many different people of many different walks of life, some very educated, some not educated. It was written by kings like King Solomon, who wrote Proverbs and the book of Ecclesiastes, prophets, and there's many of them, some major and minor prophets. I'll get into that. But just regular people, the mechanics of the time, fishermen. Fishermen they were not really the most educated people at the time, but God used them, scholars, government officials. And as I said, the Bible was written in three major languages: Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Now, any questions so far? Okay, don't worry if you come with a question, you can always, we're going to have a Q&A session towards the end. You can always, bring up your questions at the time. All right, let's keep going. Outline. So the Bible is comprised of the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old Testament, the Pentateuch, is comprised, or actually called the Law, and in Judaism, it's called the Torah. It is comprised of 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And these are 5 books. That's why it's called Pentateuch. Pent means, the prefix pent means 5, like pentagram. It has 5 edges. So pent means 5. These 5 books, again, are called the Torah in the Jewish religion. And do you guys know who wrote these 5 books? There was one author for these 5 books. Do you guys know who that was?
It was Moses, right?
Moses, very good. Yeah, it was Moses. Then after that, there are 12 historical books: the book of Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. Then you have the poetic wisdom books. There's 5 of them. I really like the second here. Okay, you have Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. They're wisdom books. They're very, very. My favorite of them is the book of Job. It's actually the oldest book in the Bible. Then you have the 17 books, the prophetic books, which are major and minor prophets. What makes a major prophet? It's not that they're more important, but it's just the length of the book. So the major prophets have actually the longest books. So Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. And then you have the minor prophets. Minor, again, it's shorter. The books are shorter. Not that they're less important than the major prophets, but it is really, oops, what did I do? So Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk. I mean, a lot of these books we don't, to be honest with you, we don't read. But I think they have a lot of knowledge and wisdom in them. Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and a lot of people pronounce this last one. It's actually Malachi, but they say that it's Malachi. They always said it's the only Italian prophet of the Old Testament, but they're all Jewish. So now the New Testament. So everyone is following along right now. Are you guys good so far? Okay. So then the New Testament is made up of the Gospels. There's 4 of them: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They're the major books of the New Testament. You have a history book, the book of Acts, which was written by Dr. Luke. Dr. Luke, many people think that he was probably the only non-Jewish author of the biblical books, but there's actually some evidence that shows that he probably was Jewish, but some say that he was a Gentile, meaning non-Jew. And then the Pauline letters, which are called the epistles. When I was younger in the faith, I thought that the epistles were the wives of the apostles. So I always thought that they're, but obviously that's wrong. These are just letters written by Paul. There are 13 of them. And you can see that in that 13 books of the New Testament. That's a lot. That's actually a lot of the major component of the New Testament. So Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. There's the general letters, also called epistles, which are 7 books: Hebrews, James, 1st and 2nd Peter, 1st and 2nd and 3rd John, and Jude. And one of my favorite books is the book of Revelation. It's a prophecy book of end time events. Although the book of Daniel also has prophecy related as well. So how are we doing on time? Full screen? Okay, let's do that. Okay. Are you guys still able to see my screen? Okay. Okay. So we went through this. Okay, now let's get to fulfill prophecies regarding Jesus Christ. One of the major points of the Bible is that in the Old Testament, again, it's hundreds of years before Jesus Christ, the Messiah, often known in Jewish circles, before he even showed up to the scene. The Old Testament prophesied about the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ. In Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, the prophet Isaiah says that he was going to be born of a virgin. So we know that. And then Genesis chapter 49, verse 10, it says that he was actually going to come out of one specific tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel, and was actually going to be the tribe of Judah. We always hear the term the line of Judah. He was going to be born in Bethlehem. Micah chapter 5, verse 2. That's going to be a big one. Usually on your Christmas cards, you'll see either Isaiah, or you're going to see Micah chapter 5, verse 2. And the interesting thing about Micah chapter 5, verse 2 is that, at the time, actually even now, there's 2 Bethlehems. There's one northern Bethlehem, and then there's a southern Bethlehem. The Bible, if you actually look at Micah chapter 5, verse 2, actually says Bethlehem Ephratah. Bethlehem Ephratah is different from the northern Bethlehem. It's the southern Bethlehem, where the tribe of Judah was. So it actually specifically even tells you which Bethlehem it is. Psalm 118, verse 22, which is a messianic psalm, it actually says that he was going to be rejected by his own people. In Isaiah chapter 35, verses 5 through 6, it was going to say that Jesus was going to open the eyes of the blind, make the deaf hear, and make the lame walk. Psalm 22, verses 16 through 18 talked about how he would die. Long before crucifixion was invented or known about, it says that he was going to be pierced. So piercing is, again, it never happened at the time. At the time, most people would be stoned to death, but piercing was kind of a novel thing. And Psalm 16, verse 10 said that he was going to be resurrected from the dead. So that's kind of important. So the Old Testament was completed 400 years before Jesus's birth, and there were at least 300, more than 300 references and prophecies concerning the Messiah. And I like this statistic here is that somebody actually, a mathematician, I forget his name, but he actually looked at the chance of someone else fulfilling just 8 of the 300 prophecies in the Old Testament. And he said, could it be someone else? If we just look at 8 of these prophecies, what are the chances that somebody else could have fulfilled those? Somebody other than Jesus Christ. And that is 1 in 10 to the 17th power. Means it's very, very, very unlikely that somebody else could have fulfilled these prophecies other than Jesus Christ. To visualize 1 in 10 to the 17th power is, and I like this kind of analogy. It's amazing. It's so if you cover the whole state of Texas, and if you guys know Texas is very, very large, if you cover the entire state of Texas with silver dollars, you stack them 2 feet deep, mark 1 coin. You blindfold someone and then let them choose 1 coin. And the chances of them picking that 1 coin that was marked in the entire state of Texas, 2 feet deep, and they find the right coin, that is the probability that somebody else could have fulfilled those prophecies, someone other than Jesus Christ. So extremely, extremely unlikely.
Brother Richard, sorry to interrupt
Yes.
you. Timothy has posed the question. He says, is this a probability 8 out of 300 or 8 in general?
8 out of 300, only 8 out of 300. Now, if it was all 300, this number would have been even astronomical. So we just looked at 8 of the 300 because, again, this number is so large that, to do 300 is just even, you can add many more zeros after that. So now if we compare to other events, lightning strike, what is the probability of anyone getting hit by lightning? 1 in 1 million. In comparison, that's 1 with 6 zeros after it. How about winning the lottery? 1 in 300 million. So that is 8 zeros after the 3. Compared to that, with 8 prophecies, only 8 of them fulfilled, it's 1 in 10